So our plan today is to cover, the remaining part of chapter 16. And we've covered, you remember the last two, three sessions, we talked about it's called Daivi Asura Sampat, right? The yoga, that's a chapter. So we covered the Daivi Sampat. There were like 26 different qualities which Bhagwan Krishna gave us. And then we covered the Asuri Sampat also, which were, I think, six things he said. And we also looked at what Swami Paramarthananda said. He said, instead of thinking about the 26 Devi Sampat, you can think about the six broad categories. So we talked about it, the self-mastery, self-integrity, things like that, self-confidence. And so we did that. And then, there are a number of verses in the chapter which describe, mainly the chapter uh, is about Asuri Sampat. So it describes a person who has a predominance of Asuri Sampat. And Krishna Bhagavan says that essentially the Daivi Sampat is good because it's the enabler for moksha. It's enabler for liberation. It helps you with Antakarna Shuddhi. And the Asuri Sampat is the opposite. It obstructs. So, in these verses, he describes, for example, he says that a person who is very, who has a lot of Asuri Sampat in it will never be able to get moksha unless they change their qualities. And they are bound to be born again and again and again in this world. That's just a way of describing it. They will never reach me, but they will always be born again in another womb of another Asuri Sampat. In other words, you'll just keep repeating this. And he also describes in a couple of verses what typically an Asuri Sampat person would be like. So, for example, he says that a person who says, I am the best, nobody like me. I have made so much progress, I have been so successful, I've won so much, and now I'm going to win more. Nothing will stand in my way. That's an example. That kind of a thing is an example of Asuri. Or a person who's full of krodha and things like that. That is Asuri Sampat. Let me actually show you the verses because it'll take a minute. So you should be able to see my screen now, right? So, this is starting from 16:7. He says, people who have qualities belonging to the Asuras, that's Asuri Sampat, do not know what is to be done and what is to be withdrawn from. There is neither inner cleanliness nor proper conduct nor truthfulness in them. And then he says, they say in this world, these people say that this world of people is untruthful, without an ethical basis, godless, is born to the union of male and female. Meaning, in other words, it's about lust. It's about just, it's a very materialistic perspective. Is driven by passion and nothing else. So you'll see all these things in us too. Sometimes we also feel this world is horrible and this world is full of evil. There's nothing ethical here, right? What Bhagwan Krishna is trying to say there is that this is our own Asuri Sampat which is speaking. It's a person who, if we can take care of our own mind and our own Asuri Sampat and emphasize the Daivi Sampat, we are not going to look at the world like this. Then we will be looking at the world through knowledge and we will look at it differently. So these are all examples he's giving to show you. I mean, Swami Dayanand has written more explanations about it, but I just want to go through this quickly with you to show you. And then I want to spend today on the last verse, which is about pramana. We talked about how Vedanta is a pramana. I want to spend time on that. Then he says, having recourse to this view, the view above, that the world is without ethical basis, these enemies of the world whose minds are destroyed, who are of meager thinking and cruel actions, are very much for the destruction of the world. So, again, describing Asuri Sampat. Resorting to these desires which are difficult to fulfill, those who are riddled with pretension, demand for respect, pride, whose pursuits are unbecoming, having adopted false purposes due to delusion, engage themselves in various actions. Right? So, this is just a description of some of the qualities he had earlier talked about. Pretension, pretension being a dambha, darpa being pride, things like that. And then he says he actually boils it down to what is called materialistic thinking. And I think you guys are familiar. I think I told you about Charvakas, right? Charvaka is a philosophy. Are you guys aware of it? So Charvaka is a philosophy which says that it's an Indian philosophy. Most Indian philosophies are based on the Vedas, or they have some ethical basis. For example, Buddhism and all, they're not based on the Vedas, but they are talking about the same kind of things. They are saying that there is more to this world. There are ethics involved. There is rebirth, things like that. Pap and Punya is recognized. Dharma is recognized in all of these religions, in all of these philosophies. But there is one philosophy called materialism, which in Indian context is called Charvaka. Charvaka was a very well-known philosophy in ancient India. And they do not recognize dharma. They say whatever you see is all there is. So, for example, their philosophy, their slogan is enjoy this world. If necessary, take loans. Because after you die, you don't have to repay your loans. Nothing will happen. You just enjoy. And there's a Sanskrit saying, which is a very well-known saying, I believe, which reflects this. So they say just live for today, because once we are gone, we are gone. There is no proof of any future pun or pap or rebirth or any of these things. I think that's Sanjay. So that's a Charvaka philosophy. And what he has brought here after saying all this is concluded in this, that there are people who are the Daivi Sampat, the Asuri Sampat are more likely to be Charvakas. Hey Sanjay,
Hello, Ji. Hello.
how are you?
Sorry,
Welcome
joining a
back.
bit late.
No
Yeah,
problem.
uh, long time.
Long time.
Uh,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
two classes missed.
Yeah. All good?
All good, all good. Yeah,
Okay.
just tired and exhausted. Just landed to
Yeah. So today we'll keep it short today,
hot,
although the
humid
topic is going
weather.
to be a little
No,
complicated.
yeah, I know. Okay, let's see how much I can grasp.
Okay, ठीक है. Okay, so I was just recapping what we had said earlier about the Devi Sampat and the Asura Sampat, which is the topic of chapter 16. Uh,
Okay.
and then um, just going through some of the verses very quickly.
Yeah.
Basically, Bhagwan Krishna is telling Arjun that Devim Sampat is required it's an enabler for moksha. It's an enabler for liberation. Asuri
Mhm.
Sampat is just the reverse. Asuri Sampat, those values, they take you away from liberation. And he is describing the people who have predominance of Asuri Sampat. So, for example, he's saying here now, those committed to immeasurable concern until death, intent upon enjoyment of the objects of desire, having concluded, just this life is much, this is it, life is this much alone. This is exactly Charvaka. Committed to desire and anger and bound by hundreds of fetters of hope, engage themselves in the illegitimate accumulation of wealth for the enjoyment of objects of desire. So, you can see this is a lot of us, we can see around are people like this. And I think what you have to understand is that the purpose of the Gita is not to denigrate these people. That's not the idea. Although it seems like that, the way that they say it, it's like very critical and denigrating. But it's trying to Krishna Bhagwan is trying to make a very sharp distinction between what is to be done and what is not to be done, and he doesn't want to leave any kind of confusion there. So when when Gita, uses things like it will call somebody a thief or a conjuice, or a miser, it's to clarify that that is the property which you don't want to have. So here too, a lot of the world is like this. We too have been like this. Nobody, if not in this janam, if you don't recognize this, you in this janam, then I can assure you, it according to the Gita, you were like this in the previous janams. But we are like this. This is how life is. Till we learn better and say, okay, this kind of a thinking hasn't taken us anywhere. It doesn't give me peace. So maybe I should try something else. So when we do that, it's the Devi Sampat in it which is taken over, which we then express. Till we do that, it is the Asuri Sampat that we are expressing. So these are just names. The names they call it Asuri and they call it Devi because they are making a big, strong distinction. But it's a continuum. It's not like there's a very clear Devi and a very clear Asuri and things like that. So this is the kind of thinking which a Charvaka has, a materialistic person has, a person who has not gone to religion, a person who has not, by going to religion, they mean not that in a traditional way that Bhagwan ki puja karo and all that. The person who doesn't recognize that there are ethics. Ethics are important. Who doesn't realize that um, for your happiness, you have to do ethical things. Good things bring you happiness, bad things don't bring you happiness, that kind of a thing. That education, that realization is not there. So that's a person who is committed to Asuri Sampat, or, who has a lot of Asuri Sampat being expressed in them. And then he goes on to say, this kind of a person says, today, this is gained by me. I got this. I will this gain this also, which is pleasing to the mind. No, I'll gain this. This much wealth I have, this wealth also I will have later. Or this is so they think. This is this is an exact translation. So you can imagine, Gita has gone to this kind of tactical tactical detail. On the one hand, Atma is never born and never dies, lofty philosophical ideals, and here it talks about tactical things. That this kind of a person says this, so it covers the whole gamut, right? Isn't it amazing? Strange, rather. And then he also says, this person also says, this enemy is destroyed by me, my enemy, and I will destroy others also. I am the ruler. I am the enjoyer. I am successful, powerful, and happy. This sort of ego, this huge sense of self, is an indication of Asuri Sampat. I'll just keep going, and then we can stop. See if you have any questions. So those who are totally deluded due to lack of discrimination say, I have wealth. I was born in a very good family. Who else is there who is equal to me? I will perform rituals. I will give. I will enjoy. So even donate. And so again, he's describing uh, an Asuri Sampat, just in case you had any doubts. Those who are completely deluded by many types of thoughts, covered by the net of delusion, a lack of discrimination, and totally committed to the enjoyment of desirable objects, they fall into unclean places of pain. Okay? Those who are self glorifying, vain, filled with pride and arrogance because of their wealth, perform rituals that are rituals in name only. Okay? Not according to the stipulations, but out of pretension. There are a lot of people who do this, who donate and perform rituals because they feel it's going to increase their standing in society. People are going to look at them as great, nice people. Those who are completely given to egoism, brute strength, insolence, enjoyment, and anger, who despise in their own and others' bodies, who are great cavillers, who are hateful and cruel, who are the lowest of men, wrongdoers, I dispatch them repeatedly into a life of transmigration only in Asuri wombs. So, basically saying they are not going to reach me, they are going to be born as Asuris next time. Kaunteya, those who lack discrimination, obtaining the womb of an Asura in every birth, certainly not reaching me, go to an end that is even lower than that. This doorway to So he's described all this, for our benefit to kind of illustrate what a person who has Asuri Sampat looks like. And then he says, uh, he now kind of consolidates it. He says, this doorway to painful experience, the Asuri Sampat, that destroys a man is threefold. And he takes out three qualities from the Asuri Sampat. He says, desire, anger, and greed. Therefore, one should give up this triad. So, desire, anger, and greed. They basically all, when you have anger, when you have desires, you'll have the desire. A desire blocked is anger. A desire pursued relentlessly is greed. So, they're they're saying, talking about the same thing, but he's just brought this out to say this is what is at the basis of all our pain. And then he says, a man who is free from these three gates to darkness, desire, anger, and greed, Kaunteya, follows what is good for himself. Because of that, he reaches the higher end. So he is repeating, summarizing everything he has said in this chapter. The one who, being impelled by binding desire, engages oneself, casting away the injunctions of the Shastra, gains neither maturity nor happiness, much less a higher end. So, he's again, Antakarna Shuddhi is the maturity or the happiness here, and the higher end is moksha. So he's saying you'd get neither of them if you give in to your Asuri Sampats. And the final thing he says, therefore, Shastra is the means of knowledge for you in the determination of what is to be done and what is not to be done. Knowing what is said by the mandates of the Shastra, you are obliged to perform action here in this world. So, this, I wanted to actually talk about this particular shlok because he refers to Shastra as a means of knowledge. And what does this actually mean to say it's a means of knowledge? That's what we'll spend the rest of the time today on. But before we do that, I'm going to shut this off. Any questions so far? Anything?
When the Gita talks in very blunt terms about a person who's free of desire, anger, and greed, there's nobody, right, who's free of desire, anger, and greed. But perhaps we've just touched upon this before that the Gita sometimes is dramatic to make a point.
Yeah, right, exactly. It's dramatic to make a point. You have to understand the intent. And different people get, some people, it's not just targeted to one person, a whole bunch of people. So, different verses speak to different people. To someone like you and me and us, maybe these kind of very prescriptive, precise, black and white verses are sort of off-putting sometimes because we say, okay, how can, like, life is not that simple. But there are many verses which will appeal to us, which we see as very relevant. But there are many people to who need this kind of very strong words. They are at a level where they don't really know right and wrong, and they want somebody to tell them without any confusion, without like in very simple and straightforward terms, what is right and what is wrong. So they are at that level, and that's what they need. So that's why Gita appeals to them. So if I take Gita to the large majority of people in India and around the world, it will be those verses which they are going to be drawn to, and they'll say, "Yeah, that's the guideline for me. That's the roadmap for me. It gives me the roadmap." But may not be for us because we are studying Gita in the context of Vedanta. We are studying Gita in the context of, and not only that, we are studying Gita in the context of Advait Vedanta. So our thinking and our approach is very different. But people don't study Gita in the context of Vedanta. So that's why Gita is what it is. Like the masses have adopted it, but the masses have not adopted Advait Vedanta or Vedanta even. Forget Advait Vedanta, even Dvait, right? People don't think about Vedanta, but they are struggling with anger. They are struggling with hate. They're struggling with all these feelings in their life, and it's important for them to hear that these are not good, that there is a way to live differently, and that will take you to higher places, to better places. So, that's why we have to use our own judgment and our own head when we listen to the Gita. How do we make sense of it? Okay. Akhila, any question from you? Anything? Does this? You're good. Sanjay and Rajiv. Mukta, sorry. Go ahead.
No, I don't have a question,
Huh.
but I just wanted to add on to what you were just now saying.
Hmm.
You know what I have understood or realized, that if you see in India, like may not have gone through all this, but if you see in India different gurus and different people who are preaching Gita in a different kind of audience, altogether different audiences. So you will see what they are saying, in how they are interpreting and how they are presenting it to that audience. It is according to the audience. Like the methodology or the presentation is such that whatever audience is listening, a group which is listening, उसके हिसाब से उनका गीता का इंटरप्रिटेशन का कंटेंट होता है.
Yeah, very
I
true.
don't know whether you are getting my point or not.
I think Kiki, she's talking to
Maybe.
you.
Sorry.
You're talking to Kiki, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I understand. I understand what you're saying.
See, if you listen to even on many YouTube talks also, so, I mean, you will listen to, ultimately you will listen to one, maybe for 15-20 minutes, you may not be able to connect to it also. But you will listen to a person with whom what he's saying, what he's telling you, the interpretation of the Gita, with which you can also connect somewhere. But I have listened to a few, but not many. But then I realized that they are catering to that kind of audience. That is why they are speaking like that.
But I am also more interested in the primary source, which is the Gita. Of course, it's important, and I have trust in it too, and how Dheeraj and how
No,
he
no,
is
that's
interpreting it.
okay.
But I am also interested in the verses of the Gita itself. And so at one point when the Gita says you should have self-confidence, and then very literally in black and white Gita talks like that, then it makes me curious. You know,
But that's the
No,
idea.
that's
So
okay. That's
yeah,
okay.
that's
That's
good.
okay.
So you have to do the work in
Hmm.
your own mind to reconcile what these different things are saying.
yeah.
Absolutely. That's Mimamsa. Yeah, that's Mananam.
I don't know whether what I said was
No,
relevant
no,
or.
I understand. I understand. I think you were expounding on the same thing that Nittu was, in fact, you were going a step further from what Nittu was saying as well, that it's targeted to different audiences. And so, yeah, it's a matter of interpretation. But yes, I understand that. But I would like my interpretation from the
Yeah,
source.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
definitely.
yeah.
Is it interpretation or is it like tailoring to the audience? Because,
That is also there.
yeah, because I assume if you are targeting, say, a set of people that are,
Yeah.
very rich and, beyond the average Joe, right? I mean, I think somebody would want to focus on certain things
Right.
differently
Definitely.
than, taking a cross section of people from a village and trying to,
Right.
Bilkul.
so yeah, I think there's
Absolutely.
some of that as well.
And to some
So,
extent, the targeting is done by the person too. Like you listen to 10 verses and connect with one, and then that is the one you'll remember, and you'll sort of
Yeah.
ignore the other nine. So there's a, but that, I mean, I have come to realize that this is the greatness of Gita, that that it is reflecting the reality of this world, that people are at different stages, and it allows you to connect at different points. See, as long as you're thinking about the Gita as as till we are not sure of ourselves, these things can disturb us, because then we are leaning on the Gita for surety, and then we say, oh, it's saying this and this. But once you have done your own mananam and you're sure of yourself, right, then you're not looking to the Gita necessarily to re-inform you, or strengthen your information. Then you're looking at Gita differently. It may strengthen, yeah, it may reinforce, but you have done your own thinking. That's the important point, which I always keep emphasizing, that we have to do our own thinking. because none of these scriptures, otherwise the scriptures can really be very confusing.
Yeah.
Okay, so I want to talk about this praman thing. Okay, and I'm going to start. Maybe we won't finish it today because it's taken a little longer than I thought for the first part. But it's very important. If you're doing Advait Vedant, the classical Advait Vedant, as per Shankaracharya, not necessarily Advait Vedant as modified by many different people, then understanding Vedanta as pramana is the absolute key. Because if you don't understand it, there'll be always confusion. So what does it mean when we say, Carol keeps saying this, Vedanta is a pramana. So Swami Dayanand keeps saying this again and again, that you have to understand that Vedanta is a pramana. So for that, we have to understand what is a pramana. So now I'm going to talk about some Sanskrit terms, and we are going to go into Sanskrit. And I honestly, I think we will have to do this next time too. So if you don't catch it the first time, it's not like the end of the world. Okay. So, so how do we know things? How do we see things? Praman, it's all about knowledge. Prama means knowledge. So how do we know things? How do we experience things, right? In this world, if you think about it, what we are doing is knowing and experiencing. That's what our life is, experiencing. And experiencing means know. You have to know to experience. I see something, I experience it, I know it. Seeing is knowing. Thinking is also knowing. I know what I'm thinking. Feeling is also knowing. I know what I'm feeling. I mean, I have to know to feel. I have to know that I'm sad, that I feel sad, that kind of a thing. So you can call them all in the broad bucket of knowledge, of gyan. This is all gyan. A gyan, not the gyan of self-knowledge, but the gyan of objects. So when we are talking about knowledge, we have to remember there is a knower. How do we think about knowledge? We think about knowledge as the knower. I am the knower. There's an object to be known. That object could be an external object, like trees that we see, or some knowledge that we have acquired, an abstract knowledge. It could be a concrete thing. It could be an internal object. An internal object is my feeling. I am the experiencer of my feeling. So my feeling is an internal object. Nobody else is feeling that feeling. I am the only one who knows it. External objects everybody can see, right? Or no. Or anger, all this is a feeling. Desire, it's a feeling. I know it, it's in me. It's an internal object. When I say desire, if I say I have a desire, there's a me, which is the experiencer or the knower, and there's a desire, which is the feeling which has to be known, and I know my desire. I have desire. There's a distinction between the two. So let's keep it simple and say I'm looking at an object and I'm seeing an object. Take an idea of perception. So I'm seeing a tree in front of me. Now in Sanskrit, the knower, the knowledge is called prama. So what am I? My intention is to get prama, knowledge. The knower is the person who knows prama. It's called pramata. So I am the pramata because I want to know. The object to be known is called prameya. So an object to be known is prameya. Prameya means that which should be known. Literally, that's what it means in Sanskrit. That which should be known. Okay. And knowledge is prama. But I need another thing to know. Because knowledge doesn't happen without a means of knowledge. The means of knowledge is called pramana. So you got pramata, prameya, prama, the knowledge itself, and pramana. Pramana is the means for knowing. So if I see a tree, what is my means of knowing that there's a tree there from a perception perspective? How do I know? My eyes, right? I see them. I see the tree. Without seeing it, if my eyes were not working, I wouldn't see a tree in front of me. I may be able to hear the rustling of the leaves. So I may know the tree is there. There, for the rustling of the leaves, I'm using another means of knowledge, which is what? Akila? The ears. Right? You're muted. So that is the ears. I may even go and bang against the tree and touch it. And then I know, oh, it's khurdra, it's like a rough bark of the tree, so I know it's a tree. Although my eyes are closed, my ears are closed, but I can still feel it. Then what am I using as a means of knowledge? My skin, touch, right?
Touch.
Right. So that's another means of knowledge. So there are five means of knowledge which are the main perceptions. There is taste, your tongue. There is smell. There is touch. There is sight. There is hearing. These are the five basic means of knowledge which have been given to man. Now, there are some birds who have a different means of knowledge. They have an understanding of magnetic waves. They can actually sense the magnetic lines of force. When they fly from the South Pole to the North Pole or wherever they do their migration, how do they know? They don't have a GPS. They know because they can sense the the magnetic lines of force. They can sense which way Earth's magnet is aligned. So they follow it. But we don't have that sense, unfortunately. Maybe if we were in Swarg, we could have had that sense too. We could have other senses which may allow us to see ultraviolet light, or another sense which allows us to hear something, could sense gravitational waves. Now there's something called gravitational waves, which also we can't sense, but whatever. So there are good, like it, take it or leave it. We've been given five senses of perception.
But those five senses are only for external objects, right?
Yeah,
Like,
yeah, yeah. So let me just. So these are the five senses of perception. They're called pratyaksha. Okay, panch senses. But this is not the only sense. There's a sixth sense, which is the mind. And you can see that even when you're reading a book, which is an external object, you're reading, it might happen that you're reading and actually your eyes are also working. Everything is working, but you realize that you've been in your own thoughts and you've gone through the whole page without registering anything. And then you say, oh, where was I? Let me read it again. So what happened there was that everything was working. The light was there, the eyes were there, all was working, but your mind was not there. Your mind was attached somewhere else. So mind, and it's not just in reading, it's also in hearing. Like there's so much noise going on around me, but if I'm busy talking to you, that voice noises, I'm blind to it. I mean, like deaf to it. But if I pay attention, I suddenly hear, oh, there's a lot of noise outside, right? Even my feeling, like I could be having lots of different feelings in my body. One of the things that Vipassana does, and Mukta has been to that, in Vipassana, you just, you learn in the first 3 days to really sharpen your mind. And these feelings which are happening all around your body, suddenly they're like amplified by 10, 15 times. You start, right, Mukta? You start suddenly feeling these things. You feel vibrations, you feel all kinds of things, which are always there. You just never never paid attention. Now your mind is so sharp that if you pay attention to that area, you can actually literally you can feel what's going on there. And that's because you're just exercising your mind, you're cultivating it, you're making it sharper and sharper. So nothing, your external senses, your eyes, ears, nothing changed. They are the same. Just your mind and the ability of your mind to focus. So the mind is like the sixth sense of perception. Not just perception, it's your sixth sense of it. These are called the Gyan Indriyas. These things, the five things I told you, are called the Gyan Indriyas. So Gyan Indriyas means senses of knowledge, senses of perception. Okay? And the mind is sometimes referred to as the sixth Gyanendriya because it is so important. It is behind all these five. And if the mind is not paying attention, these five stop working. Sanjay, so far so good? Neend to nahi aa
Yeah,
gayi?
yeah.
Okay, because
नहीं बस
you're
trying to be on
most,
track.
huh? Almost there?
Trying to be on track. Yeah.
Okay. So this is so simple so far. It's okay, right? So we just talked about the five senses. We talked about the mind, which is behind the senses. We talked about pramata, which is the knower, which is actually knowing. It's think about the knower as behind even the mind. So the knower is trying to use these five senses and the mind, the sixth sense, in order to know an object which is called the prameya, and these five senses and the mind is the pramana. They are called the pramana because they are the means of knowledge. So five senses and the mind are the means of knowledge, correct? This is how we think. This is how we consume everything in this world. Everything. Now, Vedanta actually gives 6 means of knowledge. Philosophies in India or anywhere else are distinguished by how many means of knowledge they admit to. In fact, actually, it's the underpinning. If the rest of the philosophy is based on how many means of knowledge you admit to. So I'll give you an example also, but let me first tell you what these means of knowledge are. So Vedanta says the first means of knowledge is pratyaksha. Pratyaksha means perception. And this is the mool means of knowledge. That means in every other means of knowledge, pratyaksha is involved. Okay, so that's perception, using these 5 sense organs and the mind. Then the next means of knowledge it gives is called anuman. Yeah? Anuman means inference or logic. So you'll see, particularly in science, even otherwise, we get some data. The data we get from perception. And then, based on that data and other data that we have, we draw conclusions. So, for example, I realize that, um, you know, uh, this is, like, Mukta, I'm so sorry, but I'm going to give a physics example because it's a true physics example, a true case of inference, where Einstein found that in everything else, when I travel, the and another object is moving, there are 2 moving objects, I see the other object moving at a relative speed. So if I'm at rest and the other object is moving at 20 miles an hour, I'll see it's moving at 20 miles per hour. But if I am also moving at 20 miles an hour, like 2 trains moving at the same time, I feel like the other object is at rest relative to me. It's not moving at all. And if I'm moving at 40 miles an hour, I feel like the other object is moving in the opposite direction at 20 miles an hour, right? Nothing, this is relativity. Everything, every experience in the world is about relativity. So this is normal to us. But what he found through data is that light doesn't show that. Let's say if I'm moving in this direction, one direction, and light is also moving in the same direction, and I'm moving with the speed of light, I would still see light moving away from me with the speed of light. So imagine your let's say a flash, a flash of light has been thrown forward, right, from a flashlight, and you start chasing behind it at the speed of light. You should see the individual photon at rest, right? Because you're moving with the speed of the photon or the light. So light should be just it should be a standing wave, right? You shouldn't have, but in reality, even if you're moving at the speed of light, which is not possible, but if you were, and the other light was also moving at the speed of light, you would still see the speed of light, light moving away from you at the speed of light. That means there is something wrong in its understanding of relativity. So I'm just giving you an extreme example, but he found this through experiments with at different, there's a Michelson-Morley-Morland experiment. It's a very famous experiment where they found this. Now this is a piece of data he got from his eyes, not necessarily his eyes straight away, but he used some instruments which gave him data, which he assumed data comes in through our perception senses. He got this data and he said, oh my God, there's something wrong here. Like, how is it that for everything else, there's relativity, but in light, there is no relativity? Light is always moving away from me at the speed of light, regardless of my own speed. So he used this, and then he used his powers of deduction. Using this piece of information, using his powers of deduction, he came up with the theory of relativity, which is a completely different theory. It completely changes the way that we look at reality. And the theory said, what happens is when we start moving faster, time starts slowing down. Because time starts slowing down and time is the denominator, speed is equal to distance by time is the denominator. Even when the light should have been going slower, my time starts going slower. So for me, light appears to be at the same speed. So this is not a physics class, so we don't want to get into that. But I was just giving you, this is the ultimate example in my mind of using inference to come at a piece of knowledge, uh, which, of course, the knowledge in the first place has come from perception, from experiments, from data. So this is an example of anuman. Now, similarly, there are other means of knowledge. There's another one. The next one is called upaman. So upaman is like a comparison. So, for example, you say in the jungle there'll be something called a bison. If you go in the jungle, you'll find a bison. And I've never seen a bison. So somebody is no, Mukta, you've never seen a bison, but you're going into the jungle. So I say, Mukta, you'll find a bison there. Now, Mukta will not know a bison when she sees it, but I'll explain to her. I'll tell her, it's actually like a buffalo, just a little bigger, bigger horns, more aggressive, more muscular, with a bigger hump. That's a bison. Now, when Mukta sees a bison, she'll recognize it. This is called upama, meaning I gave her knowledge of something else, which is a buffalo, which she knew, added on to it, made a comparison with it, an analogy, and she finds the bison. So this is another means of knowledge, which is upama. You may not be able to tell somebody something directly, but you tell something which is in the form of an upama. You say something else which is close to it and then compare it. This is all part of inference only. It's all part of logic. Another means of knowledge is called arthapatti. Arthapatti is also very important, very funny. It says, let's say you wake up in the morning and everything around you is wet. You can smell fresh, everything is wet, all the vegetation is green, the ground is wet. You woke up in the morning, open your windows, nice cool breeze. What would you infer from here? You'd infer that it rained last night, right? But did you see the rain? You didn't see the rain, but you still inferred it. This kind of an inference where there is the data is, you didn't never saw the rain, but just you heard other things, is called arthapatti. So similarly, there's another fifth one. It's called anupalabdhi. Anupalabdhi is, I can tell you, I can say that I don't have an elephant on my palm. Okay. Now, how do I know I don't have an elephant on my palm? I'm not seeing an elephant, but I know it by its absence. So you can know certain things by their absence. So this means of knowledge is called is called anupalabdhi. उपलब्ध का मतलब उपलब्ध है, वो सामने है. अनुपलब्ध का मतलब जो उपलब्ध नहीं है, which is not there. So these are all just five. So far, I've given you five means of knowledge, which are based on the original means of knowledge, which is perception. In other words, you have to perceive my hand to see that there is no elephant, to deduce that my hand doesn't have an elephant, right? So it's a combination of perception and deduction. Even when I deduce something, I have to see some initial data point, and then from there I deduce. So these five is nothing big there. You should be very familiar with. Vedanta says there's a sixth means of knowledge, and that's called Shabd. Shabd Pramana. Shabd means someone tells you that. That's a sixth means of knowledge recognized by Vedanta. So, for example, we talk about heaven and hell. Has anybody told you about heaven? Have you ever seen heaven? Have you seen hell? No. Then how do you know there is heaven and hell? Because the scriptures tell us so. Okay? There's no perception here. The only perception is I've read the scripture. So I need my eyes to read the scripture. Or I need my ears to hear my guru telling me the scripture. So yes, the Mool Praman is still perception. But now I know that there is heaven and hell. How do I know? Because the scriptures tell me so. In Christianity, because Jesus tells me so. Right? The same kind of a thing. This is called a Shabda Praman. Now, for Shabda Praman, you have to believe. Otherwise, the Shabda Praman has no meaning. Now, the Shabda Praman is what distinguishes, um, Astic religions from Nastic religions. So, There is something called the Vedas. There are things said in the Vedas. If you believe them and say that is a good enough for me, that's a praman for me. What is written in the Vedas is a praman for me. It's a Shabda praman. Then you believe in the Vedas. Then you take Shabd as a means of knowledge. Almost every religion that you can think of uses Shabda praman. For Indian religions, most of them it's Vedas. For Buddhist, it's the word of Buddha. For Jains, it's the word of the Mahavirs. For Christians, it's the Bible. But they lean on these texts or the sayings of these important people and say that is the means of knowledge. And people believe it in the sense they say, I believe that more than even what I see in front of me. People have that kind of faith. And that's called Shabda Praman. Now, the materialisms, the Charvakas that we were talking about earlier, right? The guys who are full of Asuri Sampat, they do not believe in Shabda Praman. They also do not believe in Anuman. They say the only means of knowledge is Pratyaksha. That means my perception. I only believe what I see, what I can touch, feel, hear, and see. That's all I believe. Everything else is suspect. Even reasoning is suspect because they say, even reasoning, from the same data, we conclude something. 100 and 200 years later, different people will conclude something else from it. So we don't believe in reasoning. And about Shabda Praman, you're telling me there's heaven and hell? Who's seen heaven and hell? I don't believe so. You're telling me if I do something good, I'll get a good result in the next janam? I don't believe it. I don't even know whether there's the next janam. I just know that right now, here and now, I'm here, and this gives me pleasure. So this is what I'm going to do. I don't know about the future. So this is materialism, and how do you define materialism now in the new way that we are looking at it? We define materialism by the fact that its means of knowledge is only pratyaksha. If you said that I only believe in what I see, hear, do, only in pratyaksha, you will automatically lead to materialism. Because you will not believe that doing good will give you something good in the next future, next janam. You will not believe in Atma too, in Brahman too, because you say, I don't see it. I only believe in things I can see. So that is how, when you say, so what is the pramana for materialism? The pramana for materialism is pratyaksh. That's it. And many people are like that, educated, scientific people. They may still do things which are ethical because they can see an immediate connection. So if I do something bad, I will be caught and put in jail today, not worth it. That's perfectly fine. I can be caught and put in jail today, perfectly fine. So I won't do it. That's good. But don't talk to me about heaven, hell, pap and pun. Don't talk to me about future birth. Don't talk to me all this nonsense. So intrinsically they are just saying, I only believe in pratyaksh. That's my means of knowledge. And scientists today actually say, we believe in pratyaksh and in all these other forms of inference. The other forms of inference being anuman, upama, arthapatti, anupalabdhi. We are fine with that because they're all based on logic. So a scientific person says, I believe in what I can see, not even directly through my eyes, but through a telescope. So if I'm seeing something from a telescope or from a microscope, that is also I'm seeing from my eyes. I'm using an external object to magnify it, but I'm seeing from my eyes. And I believe in all that. I can believe. So my experiments give me the data, which is pratyaksha. My mind and my theories and my methodologies give me the logic, and I reach conclusions that I can buy into. So that's a scientist today. Okay. But Vedanta, if this is all you believe in, then you're not going to get the hang of Vedanta. You won't get Vedanta. Vedanta says that there is another means of knowledge, and that's called the Shabda Praman. And you have to give the Shabda Praman a chance. You have to say, if you say Shabda Praman means nothing to me, then you can give up Vedanta. So what does it mean to say, I give Shabda Praman a chance? That means you have to have Shraddha. Shraddha in what? Shraddha in the source of the Shabda Praman. It doesn't mean that you have to have blind faith, but it means that you have to be able to listen and understand what the Shabda Praman is telling you, and then see whether that makes sense. You can use your logic. You can use the logic on Shabda Praman. In fact, you're supposed to use it. That's what Brahma Sutra is all about. It's about using the logic on Shabda Praman. But Shabda Praman is the source. And the Shabda Praman for Vedanta is the Upanishads. Not even the Vedas. It's the Upanishads, the end of the Vedas. That's the Shabda Praman for Vedanta. The Shabda Praman for Purva Mimamsa is the initial portion of the Vedas. Right? But the source of the Shabda Praman for Vedanta is Upanishad. And what is the Praman? The Praman is Tattvamasi. It's telling you, you are that. And through that knowledge, because it's telling you, you are that, now you're saying, oh, that must be true. Because Vedanta is telling me, because Upanishad is telling me that I am nothing but God. I am nothing but Brahman. Now, Vedanta starts. Now being able to say, okay, I understand this, I hear it, and now the process that you go through to make sense of it so that you gain conviction in it. It's not just Shabd Praman, meaning not blind faith, but you go gain conviction in it is the whole like the whole thing. This is Vedanta. Okay? Now there is much more to this because the main point I haven't come to yet, but I'm very aware that we are pretty much, we must be, I'll tell you quickly. And we'll do this more detail next time. Vedanta says, one sec. Okay, Vedanta says that the Prameya for Vedanta is Brahman. Okay, give me 1 second. There's some noise coming from outside. I want to see what it is. I'm going to just switch off the video for a second. Sorry, guys. Okay, so very quickly, Vedanta says that the Prameya, the thing to know, is Brahman. Okay, that's the object of knowledge. The Pramata is you, and the Pramana is a Shabd Pramana called Upanishad. Get it? Now, the implications of this are profound. Remember, one thing I forgot to mention, there is always only one pramana for any prameya. There's only one pramana. For example, if you have to see, we have only one pramana. That's the eye. If you have to hear, the only pramana is the ear. If you have to taste, the only pramana is the tongue, and so on. Because if you have two pramanas, you can lead to confusion. The two means of knowledge can give you two different things, and you'll be totally confused. So for any one thing, like for knowing the color and the form, it's always the eye. Okay, I'm going to go through this again next time, but I just want to I don't want to leave you hanging, so I'll just give you the conclusion. So there is only one pramana for anything. So for Brahman, what's the pramana? For Brahman, the pramana is a Shabda pramana called Upanishads. That means Brahman cannot be known through any other means. It can only be known through the Shabda Pramana of the Upanishad. Of course, you won't just take it for that just that. You will do a lot of analysis on it to find out whether what the Shabda Pramana is telling you seems true or not. You'll do a lot of thinking on it. And we'll go through it next. And that is what is called Mananam. But the source of knowledge for Brahman is Upanishads. What does it mean? No other means of knowledge exists for knowing Brahman. Don't think that through meditation, through concentration, through something else, suddenly you will see Brahman. Not possible. Brahman is not something separate from you that you can know it through any other pramana. It has to be known through Shabda Pramana. That's what it means when we say, Advaita Vedanta says that Vedanta is the pramana for Brahman. That means it means two things. One, you can know Brahman through Vedanta, through the words of Vedanta. And second, you cannot know Brahman through any other means. That's the true meaning of Vedanta as pramana. Okay? And so I'm going to leave you at this. Next time, we will spend more time on this simply because, honestly, for me, it resolved a lot of confusion. A lot of confusion about what should I do to know? What does it mean to know Brahman? Because Brahman is not an object like any other object that you can know. Brahman is you yourself. So, and there's a, this is, it'll be very useful to go through it. Okay? But next time, I can see the two Gulati brothers they've turned off the video. And they're probably,
Can I just ask quickly? So, does that also mean
yeah.
that if there is another non-dual tradition besides Vedant, that cannot be the pramana for Brahman?
No. Actually, when we say Vedanta is the pramana for Brahman, it doesn't mean Vedanta as a body or something. It means the words that I told you, Tat Tvamasi, those words are the pramana.
So it doesn't literally mean the only text is Upanishad.
Yeah, it doesn't
But
mean that. It means that some source of authority has to tell you who you are, that you are Brahman, right? So that Vedanta, Swami Dayanand Saraswati defines Vedanta. I told this before to you many times, all of you guys. You forget. The Swami Dayanand Saraswati defines Vedanta as these words, Tattvamasi. This is Vedanta. Everything else that we study is peripheral, is all preparatory, preparing our mind. Vedanta is just these words. And if the words are coming from anywhere, it's called Vedanta. The words may be coming from your friend who has no knowledge of this. It's Vedanta. The words may be coming from Raman Maharishi, who is not a Vedantist. He doesn't believe in any of these texts. It's still Vedanta. Right? The words can, it's not important. The thing is the source, the words themselves. Basically, what Shabdramana means is someone has to tell you this. So, you know that 10 people story, the 10th man story? It's the same thing. It's illustrating this point that a person has to come and tell you this. Then, when you know this, when you heard this, and you've considered it, and you've thought about it, and you've internalized it, knowledge happens. No seeing is involved, no hearing is involved. I mean, hearing is involved because somebody's telling you this, right? Or seeing involved if you read it, but that's about all. That's why it's a source of knowledge. Now, you guys are willing to consider all this, right? That means you are willing to consider that there's a source of knowledge called Shabda Pramana. But most scientists are not. Most people around us are not. Well, I wouldn't say people are willing to consider Shabda Pramana as, there is a Bhagwan. Okay, how do we know? Shabda Pramana. Okay, that yes. There is heaven and hell. How do we know? Shabda Pramana. That's okay. That's an indirect Shabda Pramana. The beauty of knowing yourself is that this is a direct Shabda Pramana. It's a Shabda Pramana, but it's direct knowledge. That's why it's called aparoksha gyan. Usually, Shabda Pramana can be paroksha gyan, like knowing heaven and hell. Okay, But let's take it next time, because honestly, I think this is for the end of the day and all that for you guys. It's probably too much already. So I'll try to think about it more. I'll try to simplify how I'm saying, but we'll get into it next time. Without, we'll start with it so that we are fresh as can be. Okay? Okay, Akila? All right. Sanjay and Rajiv,
Yeah, great.
are you guys there? Okay.
Yeah, I'm here. I hope you can hear me.
Okay, I can hear you, yeah. Okay, then anything else before we shall sign off? Rajiv, I mean, it's day for you. So if you have any question, feel free.
No, this is good stuff. I mean, lot of technical terms came up today, just to kind of get used to them.
Yeah.
But in principle, I think it's good to get the clarification about the pramana and
Yeah.
what it
Yeah,
essentially
we'll
means.
get into it
Yeah.
more next time.
Yeah.
Sanjay, okay?
Yeah.
All right then.
Okay.
Okay. We'll talk
Yeah.
in 2 weeks, okay?
Yeah,
Okay.
sure.
All right,
Bye.
guys.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye.